Welcome, viewers. You're watching Aram Sei's community engagement webinar series, Lead Kindly. Our distinguished guest today is Carolyn Russell. Carolyn is the executive director of A Safe Place, the leading domestic violence assistance nonprofit. She's a kind leader, an administrator, and an educator, and has served the public for over 30 years. Welcome, Carolyn, to Aram Sei's webinar series. It's actually a pleasure to have you here today. Um, can you start off with briefly describing your journey with A Safe Place?
My journey with the Safe Place started when the agency was in its infancy stage, I would say, in the first
Mm,
7, 8 years. We actually started out at a home off East 14th, located in Oakland, which is now International Boulevard. The agency at that time had a single family home. It was the only program at that time. And we were serving women and their children. Actually, the shelter was maybe just very much, as I said, in the infancy stages. We only had one program. At that
mm,
time, we were really just trying to make sure that we had a location where families could feel safe.
right.
We had a
So it was
unit
like sort of a fundamental thing. You needed a location, right?
right, that the
Yeah.
basic need at that time was safety. At
Mm,
that time, how do we get women and their children to safety? And one of the first objectives and goals of the agency was to provide an emergency shelter for women, initially for women, but we found that women brought their children.
mm,
When the work started was around battered women, and we recognized early on, well, they do bring their children. So we had to start really designing programs that would also provide support for children.
right.
But starting out at the shelter, as the only shelter in Oakland at that time, we were and continue to be the only domestic violence shelter in the city of Oakland. So we started out as a very small program um, during the early.
Right. So this was early in the 80s, right? That's over 30 years. So you've led this organization for now over 30 years. That's amazing. So what is your vision? I mean, can you talk about the motivation and the purpose you see with a safe place?
Sure. Coming into this work, we recognized funding was not available for domestic violence shelters. We actually had no state funding, no government funding at that time. But moving forward, as we began to legislate or began to work with legislators to receive more funding, we recognized that many of the women we were serving had
Mm,
additional needs, legal needs, other
right.
needs around assistance with social services, um, a number of other support needs. And in terms of what I see, um, I recognized that safety was critically important. But once we started to serve families, that we began to recognize there are a number of other areas that not uh, focusing on at that time.
Right.
Families needed more support. We recognize that the city of Oakland is a very diverse community. We
Right.
need to serve families where they were not Native American.
Right.
We experienced a lot of challenges with serving families and where we had language issues, barriers for many of the families we were started to serve. So we started to recognize how we needed to collaborate with other organizations. And I think that has helped to create more collaboration and partnership. One of the key areas I think that was critically important during that time was lack of partnership with law enforcement. When I started with this work, law enforcement, whether it's the criminal justice system, domestic violence advocates, were not necessarily around what was best for
Right.
domestic violence victims and survivors. I
Right.
think one of the greatest uh, challenges that we did have was getting to work with law enforcement and other communities, such as the medical community, recognizing that we cannot do this work alone. So
Yeah.
my vision has always been to create more programs and services as we work with survivors and victims and, and we listen to them and design programs that they feel that they need.
Right.
That's critical for me. I think the vision is always around how do we create services and give support in the areas where victims and survivors feel they need the support.
Right. So yeah, yeah. I mean, without yeah, I understand. These are all fundamental things, right? You need the community, you need the right programs, and you need collaboratively work with law enforcement, medical. That's it's really the foundation, right? So you talked about communities and programs. So what other services does a safe place offer? So if you can walk us through some of the key services, then it'll help the
Sure,
community understand
sure,
what they can come to safe place for.
sure. We've grown into a comprehensive domestic violence program in the city of Oakland. Starting out with an emergency shelter program, created a community center where we could serve victims and survivors who were not in need of shelter. We recognize that many battered women, victims, and survivors would not come to shelters. And
Right.
most often they were in domestic violence um, situations at home, needed support. So we created a community center so we could provide therapy, support, provide support groups for people who want to come and receive support. And so creating a community center where we could serve people in the community and providing a number of services through this community center, which would also be a non-confidential location.
Right.
That has been very successful. I think we've been able to reach out to a lot of victims and survivors who may not go to a domestic violence shelters.
Right.
There's some stigma around shelters. So I think what we've done and continue to do is to create those programs, um, legal services, other kinds of services that create more accessibility
Right.
uh, for victims and survivors.
So you actually touched upon something. If these are all very there is a lot of confidentiality around it. People, like you said, people feel there is a stigma around certain things. In those cases, how does the community reach out to your services?
Right. We've worked really hard to create a community education and outreach program. And through our community education and outreach program, we have a 24-hour crisis line and we advertise that hotline 536 SAFE. It's our key to access our services. And the 24-hour hotline gives anyone, whether they're calling for themselves for services. We have family members who are calling on behalf of victims. We have law enforcement. We have medical providers. So the 24-hour crisis line has
Right.
been the key entrance to
Mm.
how we make contact with the community. And we've developed other ways in which people can access our services. They can call us um, through our community center. So these are the types of information. This is the type of information that's given out to the community because it can be misunderstood that
Right.
we're a confidential location. And of course, no one can come directly to our shelter, which is a confidential location. But the community center, which is a non-confidential location, does provide an opportunity for the community to access our service.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. So, I know there are a lot of programs offered, and I learned about this Teen Dating Violence Prevention Month. Can you talk us through a little bit of what that is and some of the key activities that you have planned for the month?
Sure. We've worked hard over the past 35 years to bring attention to intimate partner violence among adults, teens, college students, and recognizing that we have not focused on the areas that needed to focus on
Right.
in terms of young people and the intimate relationships that they're involved in. Teen Dating Violence Prevention Month was legislated for the month of February.
Right.
And it gives us an opportunity to create more awareness, to heighten the awareness around these issues, to also give survivors and victims, young victims, an opportunity to have a voice, to talk
Right.
about their experiences. We often focus on adults, and we most often do not give young people that same space. So,
Right.
where is an opportunity to create some awareness, to educate, change societal attitudes. We're always trying to
Yeah.
do that. And as again, to give those who are in intimate relationships a voice. And also, it's an opportunity for people to hear the conversation And we are always trying to reach out to that young lady or that young man who might be listening and may be in an abusive relationship.
Right. So so I'm actually a parent of a teenager. So I'm sort of trying to understand, is there a proactive conversation also that you do in terms of teens who are actually trying to sort of date and whatnot? Do they have things that they can look out for? Is that something that you provide in those conversations, so
Right,
proactively they can identify abusive relationship before it happens? Right.
right. We believe that it's critically important to give parents a voice during these conversations. So we have invited parents who have past experiences, who are currently involved right now with a young person who may be in an abusive relationship. So
Right.
parents need to understand what are the signs. We have so much to look for in terms of how we identify young people in these relationships. So some of the topic areas we're going to be talking about is, cyberbullying, catfishing. Some of these
Mm,
areas internet has brought about for parents where they're not able to detect often because they're not as aware of some of the areas that, as young people say, they're hooking up. I mean, those
yeah.
are the words, that's the terminology. And so we want to educate parents on what they can look for, how they can get involved. And so
Right.
we feel that parents um, have a critical role in this. We always reach out to parents, even in our work in the community, we are always looking to educate parents as well.
Yeah, no, that is actually amazing, because that's I think in this world of TikToks that we're talking about, where you, like you correctly said, right? The kids are on TikTok and these apps and whatnot. The parents are actually not aware of some of the things happening, right? I think creating an awareness through parents is actually extremely important. Extremely important. Yeah.
We found this to be relevant even when we're out in the schools and we're going into the classes and educating.
Mm,
We have found that teens and children, once they arrive at school, they go into a totally different world that their parents are not a part of. And I think recognizing that there's a world that you need to better understand and educate yourself to better
right.
understand where your child might be in a different relationship.
Yeah.
And that
No.
is as a victim as well as a perpetrator.
Right.
We want to make sure that everyone gets educated.
Right. Yeah. No, it is critical. It's the right set of conversation. Now, talking about conversations, I think you're holding a community conversations event on the 20th of February. Can you talk us a little bit more about what the community conversation event is about, and what can the community learn from it?
We call it a community conversation. And the reason we're calling it a community conversation, it could be considered a mini conference, but it's given an opportunity for everyone to come to the table. During the month of February, as we always do, acknowledge this month to bring the awareness, as I've shared, but it's an opportunity for experts we will bring to this conversation, those who are doing the work in the community with young people. We will have parents. We will have the voices of those who are currently affected by intimate partner violence. We're going to focus on many topic areas. There's sexually exploited minors, which is a huge issue
Hmm.
within the city of Oakland. And we have experts who will speak to that. We have those parents who have children who are currently involved in sexual exploitation as a victim. And so it's
Right.
going to be a variety of voices and experiences, and people can join and listen if they'd like. You're not asked to speak, but we will have speakers and panelists, and we will share topic areas that I think will be critically important for anyone who'd like to learn more about intimate partner violence. We call it teen dating violence. We know that teens today have different terminology. They may call it hookup, or they may use different terminology, but that's more or less teen dating violence, the month that we
Mon-
are acknowledging.
I see. I see. Makes sense. Makes sense. I understand that. Okay. Okay. So I think I have this question, and I'm pretty sure viewers who are going to watch will also have the question. We as a community, how can we get involved with a safe place?
We're always trying to let the community know that we do not own the issue of domestic violence. We're one agency, but we need the partnership of the community. We need
Mm,
individuals, we need parents, we need mothers, we need fathers, we need sisters, we need brothers, we need cousins, because what we want to express to the community, we're serving your families. We may not serve your family directly, but if you can bring your church, your organization, whatever you might be involved in, how can you play a critical role in doing this work
right.
in whatever way that you can? So partnerships such as the partnership we have with the organization has been critically important in helping us to look at some of the ways that we might have needs that we aren't able to meet on our own. So we need support. We need support in a number of ways. And anytime we're able to have a partnership where resources are being provided to us in ways that we're not able to do for ourselves. So I think it's going to be critically
Critic.
important. Collaboration
Mm,
it's critically important for us to further the work that we're doing.
yeah, yeah, very, yeah. That's makes sense. Makes sense. So thank you, Carolyn. Thank you for your time. It's been a